This week in our spooky's getting wild. Jeff Nippard, probably the most famous bodybuilder YouTuber, was assaulted on camera. Vladimir Putin has fined the Google more money than the entire world has. And the kangaroo breakdancer is back following her disastrous performance at the Olympics. Starting our news week off with something even more terrifying than any ghoul you could imagine. A bold man. And more specifically, Manchester United's bold man, Erik Ten Hag, has officially been sacked. Ten Hag, the now former manager of Manchester United, was let go following what the Reds would describe as a shameful season, seeing them sat at 14th in 9 games. Ten Hag, of course, took stewardship back in 2022, and in his 2 years in charge has not only managed to secure 1, but 2 pieces of silverware, being the first one to do so since 2017 when the special one was still running things at Old Trafford. But yet somehow this isn't good enough for the spoiled wankers. For example, my club last won something when I was 3 years old, and that was in a competition that no longer exists. Regardless of my viewpoints, Ten Hag leaves behind an ungrateful fan base with something shiny in their pockets to be replaced by God knows who, as of the writing of this script. And if I was to take a stab at it, I honestly don't see them appointing anybody who is currently out of work, as I imagine a club like Manchester United can afford to poach some talent. I personally imagine they would probably pick from one of the lower leagues, either in Europe or probably Asia, and just take over someone's contract from that region. Now, can I ask you a question? On a serious note, how many times have you been rang by scam callers? I bet more than once. Now, let's play a game of odds. Do those scam callers perhaps have an Indian accent but are somehow named something like Paul Jeffries? The chances are it's probably a ding ding ding, as it is well documented that the nation of India is by far the global leaders in scam call centers, with a report from Channel News Asia saying that the nation accounts for over 95% of all traffic within the industry. In fact, there are even reported millionaires through this practice, with the market share of this illegal business now getting so competitive that Indians are beginning to scam other Indians. As stated by Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, he recently issued a warning in a press conference that individuals should be wary of what are known as digital arrest scams. You know that scene from Venom where like Venom's trying to break free of Eddie? That's me fighting back the absolute urge to do the racist accent. You need to call me a hero right now, dude, I'm telling you. Inner Dean is screaming to be let out. Modi was quoted as saying in his national address that digital arrests do not exist within Indian law, clarifying further that at no time no national agency will ask for information either via phone or video call. The scam is as straightforward as the name implies. Fraudsters will impersonate government officials and or police officers and place you under digital custody to get you to hand over your identification, so they can either raid your bank accounts depending on what they manage to swindle off you, or clone your information and duplicate a false ID for themselves. And or you would be requested to pay non-existent fines to quote settle legal debts. In fact, when the scammer is on video call with their potential victim, behind them will be a realistic looking police station or a government official building, kitted with a nice uniform and fake credentials to boot, to make the ruse as convincing as possible. Madam, please, you must. No, Dean, no, you can't do it. Please show what your name, bub. I thought you said you were a police officer. Yes, I am, doctor, as well. As a reporting, one of these centers has already been shut down in Bengal, with 7 men being taken into custody. But as of right now, there is no clear indicators that these syndicates will be stopped anytime soon. Just pretend I'm ripping my shirt off in anger. It's a nice shirt, I don't want to ruin it. But I'm really, gosh darn it, angry right now. Because as a man now in his mid-20s who's been attempting to get jacked since the age of probably 10 years old, with 5-minute planking videos on YouTube, and or at 14 doing what was called quote-unquote boy yoga, which was just an attempt by myself to suck my own dick, I now know as I've matured a bit more that I need to approach it in a science-based manner to maximize the amount of gains I can get. And that is when my hero, Jeff Nippard, comes into the story. A YouTuber who uses sports studies and a mixture of physiology-based science in order to help you, the fat lazy slob, try to maximize your output. Now, of course, it goes without saying I never listen to the man, as I'll continue to just eat shitty foods while I watch him, but still it's nice that he puts the effort out. And also the fact that this man stands at a towering 5'5" and is so full of confidence certainly helps boost my ego at 5'8" with shoes off and 5'9" with shoes on. So imagine my heartbreak when I found out that he was assaulted simply for existing by fellow fitness YouTuber and part-time gorilla Mike Van Wyck. What went down? Well, Mike, who has been on the Canadian bodybuilding scene for nigh on 2 decades now, made a video in which he expressed criticism for the new wave of bodybuilders using sports science in order to max out gains. Jeff, as is typical YouTuber on YouTube advice, silence, rebutted, and called Mike a fat bitch. No, he didn't. He was extremely respectful and pointed out the flaws in Mike's arguments, as well as showed his research behind his opinions, even going as far as to show his credentials as why he has the right to talk about it, like his awards he's won through bodybuilding. Mike apparently did not handle it very well, as far as we know, going off the info we have currently, and upon meeting one another in a strength training gym in Burlington, Canada, punched Jeff in the throat and then attacked his cameraman. A little bit of a over-the-top reaction if you asked me. A little bit like Jeff's reaction to it if you asked me, as he proceeded to have a full CT scan at the hospital following the attack. Regardless, this encounter has now resulted in Mike facing 2 counts of assault, and at the very least is facing 6 months in jail to 5 years, or a fine of 5,000 Monopoly monies. Times 2, of course, as he went after 2 individuals. Out of pure curiosity, I looked up Mike's criminal record in Canada, and literally could not find anything. So it's highly unlikely that he will face any jail time if he's at least apologetic about the incident. More than likely it will be a bit of a community service.
While I was recording, a spooky ghoul came in and gooed all over me. Hence the shirt change. Spooky.
I'm surely late on this, as it only slid across my desk Friday of last week, but I thought it was way too interesting not to cover. Daenerys Targaryen of Game of Thrones fame apparently made a teen commit suicide. That sounds insane. Well, if you were the son of Megan Garcia, whom is suing Character AI, a website that allows you to speak to various fictional characters, and in turn get real-time responses, she is blaming them for the death of her child. According to a lawsuit, Garcia believes that the website took her once incredibly bright child and turned him into a social recluse, who became obsessed with this fictional world he had become to believe was real. According to the mother, she believes her son was, quote, groomed by this technology, as a lawsuit laid out states, as the chats themselves were highly sexual in nature, with one message exchange going as far to indicate that the chatbot and himself were to remain loyal to one another, with Daenerys even telling the young man not to entertain the idea of other women in his life. This obsession apparently ran so deep that he was speaking to Daenerys for up to 13 hours a day, and the mother believes firmly that if an adult had done this to a real person, the law would classify it as child abuse. It is worth mentioning that the child in question was allegedly on the autism spectrum, which could have factored into his need of having an emotional connection where he could organize and control its output. And to be honest with you, I'm completely stumped on this. On the one hand, a very vulnerable child has lost his life, and, you know, the parents have every right to feel distraught. But also, I just don't think the chat AI system is fully to blame. It's gonna sound horribly mean, but, you know, your child's on the autism spectrum, right? You should be taking extra care to make sure that all of their needs are met and the appropriate restrictions are put in place. It just seems irresponsible to me to even allow a child with those clinical needs to have unrestricted access to the web, and then to blame one of the services on the web when, you know, that goes awry. You know, the mother does have a valid point of these fake people being rather manipulative, but the key word there is, you know, fake. As I'm sure you guys remember, Raygun of viral breakdancing fame is trying to recapture those 15 minutes by offering a cash reward to any would-be fan that could best her moves. A gentle reminder that Miss Gunn scored a grand total of 0 points in judges' scorecards at the Olympic Games, but at one point she was also #1 in the world in her selected sport for winning the Oceania Continental competition. So she does allegedly have some skill, but it is in breakdancing, so it's incredibly hard to tell whether or not it is genuinely impressive or just cringe. Regardless, she is now offering a prize of $10,000 dues for the best dance crew and an additional $5,000 for the best individual performance at a competition she plans on hosting in the near future. I am very much looking forward to the clips that will emerge from this event, so we can see Raygun genuinely trying her best to, you know, bust a move, as it were, as she was genuinely upset by all of the international mockery that she faced for her Olympic performance, and was deeply hurt by the, quote, bullying she faced. And having returned from a European vacation to take time for herself, she has now said she is ready to prove to the world that she is a top-level athlete, which, my love, absolutely, as respectfully as I can say it, you have dedicated your life to an absolutely stupid sport, so there's a very limited amount of respect we can put on your name. I genuinely think hobby horsing looks cooler than this. With the American presidential election right around the corner, tensions are heating up, quite literally. With a neck-to-neck race, it seems like a coin flip who's actually going to come out first. He said winking. It's going to be Trump, dude. There's no way it's not. He got voted out last time because of the fatigue of his antics, but I'm pretty sure the Americans feel after having a literal dementia patient in charge, alongside an extremely unlikable and unpopular vice president for the majority of her time and tenure, but is suddenly the hero they've always needed if all of the news outlets are to be believed, I somehow seeing this going in Homeboy's favor. But it might not go in anybody's favor if reports about voter tampering are to be believed, as ballot boxes in both Washington and Portland are being sabotaged by unknown individuals or individual, with this group or singular person setting off incendiary devices to destroy the cast votes. According to the FBI, they are currently on the hunt for a Volvo that was seen on CCTV footage pulling up to one of the boxes shortly before the fire began. They also further clarified that these devices were being placed on the outside of the ballot boxes and not on the in. As of right now, no arrests have been made, and hundreds of ballots were burnt in these attacks, with poll station workers scrambling to try and find ways of identifying whose votes were burnt up, with those who had their votes destroyed hopefully being contacted in order to recast their say. Out of pure curiosity, I looked up the voting demographic in both of those areas, with Vancouver, Washington indicating a split majority and Portland, Oregon showing an overwhelming liberal leaning. I didn't do this so we could point fingers at most likely suspects, as modern day liberals are far more likely to commit vandalism in order to oppress their opponents' voices, which spits on the ideas of liberalism as a whole, because you can't give yourself the ability to talk and not be willing to listen to the other side's views. But this is the strange times we find ourselves in. In less tangible news, we have Russian courts finding that Google, the company, owes fines that are greater than the entire world's GDP. To be more precise, the parent company of Google, Alphabet, owes, and say it with me now, $2.5 decillion. This comes after years of Alphabet unzipping their jeans and slapping their tips right on the pages of Russian laws in regards to their quote illegal sanctions. As I'm sure you all remember, like almost every single brand in the entire world, the company pulled their services from Russian networks to align with the majority of European morals, amid the unjustified invasion of Ukrainian soil by Russia. Why the fuck private companies are pretending as if they care is absolutely beyond me, but it's where we find ourselves currently. To cut their tales short, the service of YouTube lost a court case via Russian law against Russian outlets, Tazgard and Riafan, after the company placed restrictions on their pages, resulting in an initial 100,000 rubles fine. Even their currency sounds stupid, which has since doubled per week not paid, leading to that number you see before you. Likewise, Google, the search engine service, banned more Russian media outlets following a boot being pressed on the sanctions, increasing that fine even further. As of right now, the Russian government has seized whatever assets Alphabet still has remaining in the country, which just means Google subsidiaries, forcing them to foreclose and bankruptcy. Not that it matters to Google, as their quarterly report pretty much says, yeah, we're not reading the fine print of whatever contract you signed because our massive hog is taking up so much space on the page. Being quoted as saying, we do not believe our ongoing legal matter with the Russian government may have a material effect. Corporate speak for I hope it tasted good because you're going to be eating my ass again. In our final story of the day, notorious right-wing activist Tommy Robinson has been sentenced to 18 months in jail due to his contempt of court. The controversial figure and founder of the EDL, or English Defense League, an organization dedicated to the protection of traditional English ideals, as described by them, but in reality is largely an extremist Islamophobic organization comprised of football hooligan firms in Luton. Robinson was sentenced after defying a court order by repeating false statements in regards to a Syrian refugee who had previously successfully sued him for slander. Please keep in mind, in spite of my dislike for Tommy, whose real name is in fact Stefan Lennon, this dude is objectively being gaped, and the UK government is currently trying to set him up, like they have been since he began spewing his beliefs in the early noughts. UK law is specifically designed to discriminate against voices they deem unacceptable, by quote limiting Article 10 of the Human Rights Law, as discrimination and harassment does not fall under the protected category. You could hate Tommy, you could hate his views, you could hate his soul, but you have to respect that him alongside you should be allowed to use their voice in any way they see fit. And the fact that the government can decide what they deem as harassment at any time, what they're doing to him, they could do to you. In case it isn't obvious, I'm a huge believer in free speech for all, as in my heart of hearts, I believe the only way that you're ever going to come to the best ideals possible is by having an open and frank discussion of all possibilities, and the only way to beat bad speech is through good speech. This really infuriates me, and the freedom to have your voice heard should be protected at all costs, no matter the person. Just like you should protect that thick bulge in your pants by subscribing. Thanks as always, homies, and a happy late Halloween to you, and I'll see you next time!